So every year around this time, I notice the same trend in teaching, and that is September. Students are listening for the most part. School started, back to school season started, and there's kind of this honeymoon period, but then October hits and behaviors are steadily on the rise. Well, today we're going to be talking about what to do about it before it gets out of hand. So with that being said, let's dive in.
Hey, teacher bestie. My name's Helena, and I'm the creator of the Present Teacher Podcast. I'm a first year teacher coach, and in this podcast, you are going to learn everything from simple, actionable classroom management, social emotional learning, and teacher wellness strategies. You know that impact you want to make in the classroom? Well, we're going to make it happen here.
So before we talk too much in depth about how to fix this, let's talk about why this happens in the first place. So why do behaviors rise around this time of year? Well, there's a couple different things going on. Kids like to naturally test the boundaries because they like to know where the beginning and ending of things are. I like to think of boundaries as like a fence. When you have set boundaries in your classroom, it's clear where the playground starts and ends and where your students are allowed to play in and where they aren't allowed to be because they might be off into the street or in front of somebody's house. Well, that's essentially what boundaries are. And when you don't have clear boundaries in the classroom or a clear fence line, your students are naturally going to test to see where that end is and how far they can push it to extend that fence. So it's really important to make sure that you have strong boundaries. And this is something that, again, kids are just naturally going to test as time goes on and that honeymoon phase kind of ends. The second thing is routines start to get sloppy. Maybe at first you were really adamant about how students did things a certain way and that they followed the expectations. But as time went on and things got busy, things started to slip. You had kids talking when they weren't supposed to, kids goofing off, and you didn't catch it right away. And then eventually the kids just learned that that's okay to do. And now our routines are sloppy and kids aren't following expectations like they used to. The third thing is teacher fatigue sets in. I know this happened for me in October of my first year of teaching. That was around the time that teacher burnout kicked in. And so I didn't have the energy to dedicate to running my classroom like I would have. So that's when teacher fatigue sets in. So it's easy to have that honeymoon, that energetic, excited to be there phase kind of end for teachers and that transition to survival mode. And so it's natural then that students are going to mirror or match the energy you come into the classroom. So if you're not on the top of your game like you were at the beginning of the year, no fault to you at all, your kids are just naturally going to mirror that energy and match that energy and mirror it back to you. So now that we talked about why this happens, let's talk about what to do when it comes to not being in the honeymoon period anymore. So the first thing is to don't throw everything out. You've done a lot of the hard work already at the beginning of the year, so you don't need to restart from scratch. Here's what I recommend doing. Review your classroom procedures. Now, there's a specific way I like to teach classroom procedures, and if you want to see more in depth what that looks like, definitely check out my classroom procedure slides. It has over 40 classroom procedures I teach in my class. They're already done for you, already filled out. All you have to do is go through and tweak anything that you have differently in your class because we all have different expectations in class and you can use them. Even if you need inspiration, you can definitely check those out. But go through and review your classroom procedures. For me, this looks like, so I definitely recommend checking out those classroom procedures, but reviewing your classroom procedures. So if I notice that my students are maybe not lining up how they're supposed to, then I might say, oh, I love how student A did this, student Y did this, but I noticed most class did this. So let's review what it should look like and sound like to get in line. And I would review the procedure and then we'd walk through it and then we'd practice it until we got it right. So I don't have to go through and redo everything I did the first couple months. A simple review and having your students practice the right way is enough to really start sending that foundation of reviewing and tweaking and getting back on track and getting those boundaries set and those routines tightened up. The next thing I recommend doing, so we talked about don't throwing everything out. This next thing is consistency is king. So it's easy to get lax with giving students a bunch of warnings. For example, your students are talking, you give them a warning. Hey, I need you to listen, or I need to take a minute from recess. Hey, the expectation is this, I need you to do this, or I'm going to call home. And you keep giving them warnings until eventually you don't follow through with the consequences. And then eventually your students learn that they can do stuff without you actually following through with the consequences that you told them. So instead, incorporate a no more warning policy. Provide students with the choice to follow the expectation or receive a logical consequence. So, and make sure to follow through with that. So for example, let's say, all right, starting on Monday or starting today, there's no warning policy. So that doesn't mean you have to be mean about it. You can still do it in a loving, caring, supportive way. So for example, a student makes a mess in the bathroom. Hey, the expectation is this. I need you to clean up the bathroom. The expectation is that we use the restroom when we don't make a mess. You can either continue to use the restroom and keep it clean, or you're going to have to write an apology letter to the custodian for making a mess in the restroom. Keeping it fair, simple, neutral, and separating yourself from the consequence. Another example of this is, let's say you have students who are talking during your lesson. You pull them to the sideline to have a sideline conversation. You're like, hey, the expectation is that you are listening when I'm talking and not talking to your friends. You can either follow the expectation as I continue this lesson, or we continue with our learning, or you're going to have to practice what it looks like and sounds like to follow and listen to when others are talking during this time. So you're not giving a bunch of warnings. You're saying, here's the expectation, here's the consequence. Which one are you going to choose? You can either follow the expectation, or this is what's going to happen, and then you follow through with it. And you're not doing it in a mean way. You are just showing them where that boundary is, so they're not tempted to keep pushing the envelope or keep pushing the boundary, because they know you're not serious about it. So as a recap, we talked about why this happens, why the honeymoon phase tends to end around this time. We talked about how you don't need to throw everything out. Just a quick review is enough. We talked about how consistency is king. And now let's talk about how to stay calm and confident. So here's the thing. Kids can pick up on your energy, and I talked a little bit about this earlier. But if you come in dreading work or feeling afraid that they're going to walk all over you or that they're going to interrupt constantly, then that's exactly what's going to happen. Your kids are going to match that energy. So make sure when you show up confidently, and your students will do the same. So that wraps up everything in regards to why the honeymoon has ended and what you can do about it. As a recap, we talked about why this happens in the first place, why this is common for many teachers, if not all teachers. We talked about how you don't have to throw everything out to fix it. A simple review can be enough. We talked about how to be consistent and how consistency is king when it comes to moving forward and having strong classroom management for the rest of the term. And then we talked about how to stay calm and confident, because whatever energy you show up with, your students are definitely going to match. I hope you found this helpful. Which one of these strategies did you find the most helpful that you're going to incorporate? Let me know in the comments or send me a DM. I would love to chat. If you found this helpful, couple things. I would really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, or leave a review wherever you're tuning in from, so more content like this can reach more new and first-year teachers. The second thing is, if you want more free content or free strategies, I recommend checking out my classroom management guide. My classroom management guide wraps up the top 10 questions and strategies I get in regards to classroom management, and it links to additional podcasts and YouTube videos, so you don't have to sift through all my content. You can go directly there, get a short answer to your question, things like what to do when students are talking while you're teaching. You can read my blurb on my answer, and then if you want a further explanation, you can click to that podcast or YouTube video and tune into that for further explanation. So definitely go check that out. If you want to take it a step further and you want me to create templates for you that make classroom management easier, definitely check out my classroom management bundle. So this bundle has everything from classroom procedure slides, classroom jobs, everything I use in my classroom. So definitely go check that out. And what I like about this is if you want to access individual templates or you just want to see individual templates, you can check that out. It'll link to individual templates in my TPT store. So if there's one in particular you want access to and not the whole bundle, you can definitely do that. And the final one, if you want more strategies, you want me to take you through the entire classroom management system I have in my classroom as inspiration and how you can take it and make it your own. But you also want help with things like lesson planning, grading, communication, organization. Definitely check out the Present Teacher Circle. The Present Teacher Circle is my community where I help new and first year teachers automate their classroom with systems so their first few years aren't overwhelming and they don't reach burnout. So if that's something you're interested in, I definitely recommend you check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, remember we are stronger together, and I'll see you in the next one, Teacher Bestie. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I hope that you were able to take away some value that will help you thrive inside and out of the classroom. It would mean the world to me if you could take 5 seconds right now and leave a review on this podcast. And if you found this podcast especially helpful, make sure to take a screenshot of this episode right now and tag me on your socials to let me know you're listening. As always, remember that we are stronger together with all the love in the world. Helena, aka the Present Teacher. See you next time, Teacher Bestie.